This is C, and to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi,
hello there.
Welcome back to the Krakoa Cave, and today we have a meme of a comic. Let's crack this open and see what we have. So in here we have X-Men number 67. First of all, you see this bag? See how wrinkled and crinkled it is? This is what happens with polythene bags with older Bronze, Silver Age comic books. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to replace it with something that's a bit better. And here we have it. Issue 67. And this is a reprinting of issues 12 and 13 in 1965. This issue was printed in 1970. Now, first impressions, you've got a little bit of spine roll. This should be on the spine. And the book itself is quite bumpy, a bit rough. You can see the paper's a little bit, it's not as smooth as it would normally be. You also have a slight mark here. We have a corner crease where it's been bent over. So that's a colour break there. There's a slight tear. And we have more tearing here on this corner. On the back side, this is filthy.
Dirty little boys.
They're all quite dirty. There's lots of grime that's accumulated over the years. But at some point, we will give this a bit of a clean. So as I say, this reprints issues 12 and 13, which was the first appearance of the Juggernaut. Now, if you don't know the Juggernaut, he is the stepbrother of Charles, who looks like he's about to bite his hand there, actually. And he isn't a mutant. Lots of people get confused that he might be, or he is. But he is in fact a human who is gifted the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak and becomes this unstoppable man-mountain known as the Juggernaut. So essentially, Cyttorak is Gru, and Juggernaut is his minion.
Slow down, minion. If you drink too fast, you get bellyache.
Now let's have a quick look through here. So we have the origin of Professor X, and obviously the first appearance of Cain Marko, the Juggernaut. It's interesting that they start the reprints with the first Juggernaut as opposed to issue 4 or issue 1 where you saw Magneto established or the Brotherhood. But yeah, starting with issue 12 and 13 is interesting. Perhaps they didn't sell quite as well as the first few issues, hence why they decided to reprint these instead. So you have Professor X receiving a warning that someone's on their way, and you have the X-Men going all out to make traps. Are these hand grenades going into logs? Nice. Yes, they are. Grenades going into logs hollowed out by Cyclops' beam. You've got Cyclops building a trench and Beast laying cable. Got all the X-Men doing their thing. We have Charles' origin here, where his father's died and his mother meets up with Mr. Marko, whose name I can't remember, and how Charles and Cain become siblings or step-siblings. And we see already at a young age, Cain was a bit of a bully. What's quite nice is we have the modern with the past, so the present with the past. And then you have this creature, this man, this monster cracking through their defences easily. Then we have this back to the past where we see Charles's stepfather sacrificing himself to save the two boys. which I'm sure Kane took really well. Again, we don't see the Juggernaut. We just see how his actions are totally dismantling everything the X-Men have done to prevent him coming in. We have the two having a physical fight, even getting into a car wreck. More this menacing creature walking his way through the tripwire. These grenades all popping out of the logs. And yet it doesn't hold him back. He is, after all, an unstoppable
Juggernaut, bitch!
Here's the Crimson Gem of Cyttorak. This is obviously what gives Kane his powers. We see rubble fall onto Kane. Professor X thinking that he's been killed or been destroyed by the rubble. Obviously we later find out that that's not the case. We have Juggernaut smashing through some logs there. We have the X-Men scrambling here. Every defense so far has fallen. They need to fall back. You've got Professor X, Marvel Girl and Cyclops moving their way deeper into the mansion. This whole time this force is pushing its way through. These giant steel doors crumbled. Iceman putting a big ice block in the way, which is instantly punched out by the Juggernaut. Cyclops using his beams, which have previously pushed elephants back, and we can see we later see how powerful his beams really are. And Juggernaut's just walking through. And in the last panel of issue 12, we see the Juggernaut in full view. And we see exactly why the Juggernaut's here. So dear brother, we meet again. What a pity it is for the last time. You get a pretty good intention of what the Juggernaut plans to do. So that's the end of issue 12. And then over the page, we see the beginning of issue 13. So we have the reverse of this image here, so the big imposing Juggernaut, whereas here we see the sheer scale of the man. And that's where this issue here, issue 13, picks up. And as you can see from the front cover, there may or may not be a special guest appearance. So we finally see the Juggernaut actually take on the X-Men rather than just taking on defences. Professor X using his mental powers on him. However, as we know, Juggernaut's helmet prevents those attacks from doing damage to him. However, it doesn't stop him flying backwards. Cyclops shooting into the earth so Juggernaut can fall. Iceman just doing what Iceman does. Yes. Professor X asking for his Mentos helmet. Hopefully he doesn't drop it in some Diet Coke. Obviously the blueprint of what we later see in Cerebro. I think Cerebro's a better name than the Mentos helmet. Juggernaut at the bottom of the hole, punching through the soil to make himself a ladder so he can climb back up into the mansion to take on Angel and Cyclops. You see how Cyclops' powers are just not anywhere near strong enough to take on the Juggernaut. But it's okay because Angel can just punch him in the back. This is interesting here. You see the Team Brigade, which was a Jack Kirby ensemble. I believe Rick Jones from Hulk fame was part of that, as well as Matt Murdock there, who obviously is Daredevil. So yeah, Professor X reaching out to these people, so you get an idea of the wider scale of the Marvel Universe at this time. And you have Juggernaut just tossing Angel aside.
Toss me! What? Don't tell the elf.
And Iceman doing the usual thing of just making the floor a bit slippery. That in conjunction with Cyclops' powers would surely push him over, but who knows. Some sort of fantastic car? Or is this just a normal car? As we have Johnny Storm here in his Fantastic Four uniform, climbing in. And we have mention here, don't take our word for it, See the Great Fantastic Four Annual number 4, which I believe was the marriage of Sue Storm and Reed Richards. You have a copy of that lurking, that's worth a pretty penny. Now that Angel's been incapacitated, Iceman steps in. Yeah, his icy powers don't stand a chance against the Juggernaut, he just shatters them. Beast takes over. It's always an interesting fight between Beast and Juggernaut because you know that Beast isn't anywhere near strong enough. I think he can only lift about 3 tons or something like that. I say only, significantly more than I could do. However, what he does have is agility, and you can see he's leaping through Juggernaut's hands and backwards and just throwing him off balance, using momentum to shift things in his favour. Although I think that's only for a period of time. I'm sure at some point Juggernaut will do what Juggernaut does. We have him loosening Juggernaut's helmet. If you've watched the animated series or anything involving Juggernaut, the one weakness is that he can be telepathically stopped or controlled. I just realised I'm stroking Beast's foot there. And that seems to be a way they always go back, or at least a way they can help deal with him. You have Juggernaut starting to grab hold of Beast and throw him around a bit, so momentum is shifting. Finding their way into the Danger Room, which Beast switches on. And obviously the X-Men are well trained in the Danger Room, they know how to deal with it. But when you have a villain like Juggernaut who hasn't seen it before, you'd like to think it will slow him down a bit. You have a huge, 10 tons? 10-ton roller coming to squash Juggernaut. However, Juggernaut himself is a bit of an immovable object, so what happens? It's sent right back towards Beast, who does his best to get out the way, but smashes his head on it. And there he is, incapacitated. You have Professor X reaching back out to Johnny, who wasn't quite sure whether to trust him, and then he flames on to come help the X-Men.
He's gonna say it!
Say what?
Avengers! Flame on! Sorry, what now?
And now that help's on his way, Professor X takes his helmet off. Takes off his Mento helmet. And does his best, well, Jean Grey does her best to slow the Juggernaut down in time for the Human Torch to get here. But even he doesn't seem to be able to stop him. Professor X reaching out to Angel, letting him know that the helmet is now loose and he may well be able to prise it from his cranium. You have Johnny blinding the Juggernaut, Angel flying up, flying round, before swooping down to tear his helmet from his head. Now, I was always under the impression that Juggernaut was a Jean-Gere. Red hair. He certainly had red hair earlier in the panel, but they've given him black here. Must be a colouring error. Professor X using his mental powers there to incapacitate him. Yeah, Juggernaut's out for the count, but then he also uses his powers to make Johnny Storm forget that he was ever there. Interesting. And then all the X-Men are all battered and in bed, but they are victorious against the unstoppable Juggernaut. So yeah, that is issue 67. So that followed issue 66, which was the last issue of the X-Men before it was cancelled and then reprinted for 25 or so issues. But yeah, a bit of original artwork on the front here. Obviously inspired in a way by this, having a Human Torch there, so this is obviously some sort of alternate art for issue 13. However, not quite. I quite liked that in the first issue, issue 12, you didn't actually see the Juggernaut, you just saw this shape coming towards the X-Men. Now let's get this in a nice Mylite 2, ready to be stored. And there we have it. Issue 67. All bagged and boarded. This was the first of the reprints. I now have the full reprint run. We have some of the earlier issues in 66. And now we work backwards, trying to complete the run from issue number 1, ideally, but let's see if I win the lottery first. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again soon.